I want to thank you very much, and thank you, Terry, for being on me. He's been kicking my behind for like a number of years now about this book. He and my wife both say the book. Every time he calls me, how's the book? How's the book? And I'm like, oh, Christ. And it is a journey. It's a real journey, and I think he's absolutely right about, I think we have a habit of undervaluing whatever it is, whatever magic we actually have, because I guess we just do it, and you don't really, I think it's part of that, what makes it hard to sell it in your mind, because you're just doing it, and you never know how it's really reaching out and affecting people. I recently had this wonderful experience where I did a cabaret, and so I was kind of in this mindset of this is going to be my year, yes. Because, so we had that funky little pandemic. And I backslid, as the good church people would say. And because I was literally on a stage, I was literally under a tent at my wonderful friend's circus. So he called me in to step in for him. His name is Kevin Bernardos of the Bernardos Circus, which will be here in the area later this month into the Christmas holidays. Beautiful show, it's nice, it's quaint, it's very intimate, high energy, great quality acts, you'll love it. And Kevin and I go way back. He was on Ringling's blue unit, I was on their red unit, so we were ruling the world. And he called me in to step in for him. He was having his daughter. And literally I was on stage, Louisiana, I was in Shreveport, Louisiana. It was March 2020. My mother had come down to help my wife out. She said, you know, Jonathan's gonna be out of town, I'm gonna be working. Could you come down? Great. March 2020, and this was supposed to be a really hot year for me. I was booking some speaking gigs, one in particular that I'm making up later this month. And literally, you know what happened. March 2020, I'm standing on stage, you're like, you need to go home. And, you know, suddenly I'm kind of like lost. So lost that I backslid. And what I did was I went out and got me an insurance license. And I didn't tell Terry for a while because I knew what he was going to say. I was like, you have no business selling insurance. Come on, guy. But I was like, I got to do something. I got to feed my family. You know, those nice excuses we give each other. Hide behind the family. So I went and got the license, felt accomplished passing the test. But here's what's funny. When you're lying to yourself, or when you're unaligned, and you're not going the way your blood beats, as the great James Baldwin would call it, your whole mechanism is off. Everything's off. Everything's off. And a lot of us wonder why we have a lot of misery or what mishaps in our lives. Not to say this stuff doesn't come, it's supposed to. I mean, it's life, it comes in seasons. So it has to happen. You have to get something. But when you really feel off and really depressed, a lot of it has to do with the fact that you're just not aligned with what you do and your thing and what you are. And as long as you're not aligned with what you are, you will malfunction. Period. It's just that simple. And you can raise your fist at God all you like, and he'll look down at you or look at you going, I'm just waiting. You know, I'm just waiting for you. I gave you everything you need. What are you waving your fist at me for? One of the funny, speaking of Moses and the wonderful people who were complaining the whole time, running from slavery, by the way. It's one of the funniest episodes in Scripture. So pardon me if there are any heathens here, but indulge me, because this is one of the funniest portions in Scripture. So Moses, who his whole life is like a big trip. His whole life is an identity crisis. Right? I mean, For those of us who went to Sunday school, what happens? His mother has to give him up because people are trying to kill all the boys in Israel. They're trying to kill all of the Hebrew children. Well, there wasn't in Israel yet. They're trying to kill all of the Hebrew children. So he ends up in his master's house, a prince. And he's got this dual thing going. He's a prince in the greatest kingdom in the world, knowing his own people are out there ensconced in slavery. That's a real identity crisis. And it comes to a head because one day he goes out on the stroll, sees his fellow Hebrew getting brutalized, and, well, he just commits a murder. And then he's running for his life. Because what happened, something in him stirred. The truth popped out. It popped out a little zealously, but it popped out. And as one fiery reverend who was scared of no one once said, it's like God looked at him and said, I can use that man. And it's crazy because we're kind of like that, right? You know, like our truths will pop out at certain places in our lives and they scare us to death. May have us running for our lives like Moses. But believe it or not, the heavenlies are looking at you. I can use you for my program. And it's kind of like, you know, you're teaching a child how to do something and they're flopping around or whatever, but you're like, no, there it is. You got it. You're learning how to use your magic. Now, of course, his was highly dysfunctional, but what was he doing? He was enacting justice. He was enacting what his legacy would be. He just didn't know it. And then he has the confrontation, of course, with the bush, which I would have loved to have been a fly somewhere just to kind of observe that, because that had to be a trip to hear some bush talking to you and it's on fire. And you can't really even talk that well because he had a speech impediment. So he's got all these insecurities. And this bush is telling him, I want you to go lead. I want you to go be what you are. But, no, go lead. That's what I want you to do. And they're having this back and forth. And God gives them accommodations. He brings his brother into it. And we know how that worked out. But he brings his brother into it. And they go, they lead, they set the people free, and they're on their way out. They go through all of the plagues and a whole bit, and they're on their way, and boom, there goes the Red Sea. And he's crying out to God, right? He's got his rod, and he's just, what do I do? And this is where it got funny to me. For some reason, it's like I always have this picture of God going, and he basically says, what's in your hand? What's in your hand? Why are you calling me? What's in your hand? Oh, this staff thing. Yeah, you know, the thing you just plugging all over the place. You're going to ask me, what do you do? We laugh, and we should. Because that was me for like 2 years. Going, oh, what do I do? I'm trying, because I'm trying to make that money, man. I'm trying to get paid. And I was going broke. And I was, and the other thing that was happening to me was I was becoming a slave to distraction. It's a weird thing, right? Like when you're off, when you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, all sorts of things happen. And we have to be so careful in this day and age, because this day and age is dangerous. It is dangerously distracting. I was talking to a beautiful friend of mine who I've known since high school, and we were talking about how even the conversation among young people have changed. Like when we were young, so I'm in my 40s, but we were teenagers. She reminded me, we were talking about some real heavy political stuff. I said, yeah. And she's like, the danger now is these kids have so much just scrolling. They have so much information. It's like, it's just it's too much. And, my mother who I really think is a social science genius, was very hawkish with me when I was a kid about my media intake. I thought she was a nut, but I grew to really appreciate and love what she did because it just formed everything. I mean, I don't think we're really cognizant or we're not good guardians with our souls sometimes.
Preach.
You know, guard your heart, for out of it spring the issues of life. Sin crouches at your door, but you must learn to master it. And I think in a nutshell, I think we have to learn the fine art of winning our minds back. So all of these entrepreneurs and creatives that are here, that's your big challenge, because there's nothing wrong with this stuff. It's just we've forgot to be the masters of it. Because you can get lost. Like half your day can go to Facebook. And I've kicked myself all the time. Terry will tell you, it's true. Like, I'm like, why am I having a conversation with this person? Like, why am I going back and forth with this human being over? Like, this is not adding anything to my life. And before you know it, it's nighttime. And we know the older you get, time is like, it just flies. And so I'm like, I'm not even coveting my time. I'm not even, you know, I'm just, this thing has become a drug, you know? And then you have to deal with the guilt of it all. You know, the guilt you feel because now you're dragging around like, oh my gosh, I keep wasting so much time, but it is a real addiction. And so I've come to a place now where I've had to take on new habits or re-engage certain habits, certain spiritual habits, certain mental habits. But the main thing is getting back to your gift, getting back to you. Because it's the strangest thing when you set your feet down, 10 toes down, into what it is you are and make that decision. It's like the stars and everything aligns. It's kind of like God goes, there you go, you ready? Because the thing about the heavenlies is they're stubborn. They're not going to budge. And if you know that, then you really learn. And anybody who's been married for more than 5 years knows what I'm talking about. Love is stubborn. It's beautiful because it's stubborn. Because love will never, ever, ever lower itself to you. It's always going to come on up. Come on up. You have to break yourself. You just have to break yourself to get it. It takes a lot to become a butterfly. You have to go through you have to break, you have to humble yourself, you have to really put yourself in that. I always thought, and someone said this, I don't want to act like I thought this up, but I thought he was absolutely right. It's a friend of mine who was a beautiful opera singer. He said, whoever said, if you do what you love, you won't work a day in your life, clearly never did what they loved. And they sure as hell wasn't married. Right? And all the married people said, amen. It will stretch you, man. I mean, I remember I told this high school graduate class at one time, I said, don't ever say you love something you're not willing to suffer for. You know, so you have these things you're building. And that's why so many go into entrepreneurship and they fail. Like I did. That's what I did with insurance, because that's all it is building your own business. And there's nothing wrong with that business whatsoever, especially depending on the company you align with or how you wish to do it. I think it's a wonderful business. It's just not my business. It's just not my business. And that's a big thing. I mean, before you do a business, you better find out, what is my business? Because whatever your business is, you're going to have to go through all of these seasons and outbreaks and all sorts of things. We have to learn to trust the gift, learn to trust what's driving us in all seasons. You almost have to become your own therapist. You almost have to talk yourself up. It's one of the reasons that I love the book of Psalms, because it's like a complete life book. I don't even care if you're heathen. That book is amazing. It's amazing. They go from worshiping God to practically cursing him out, to like depression, talking about, I want you to kill my enemies, why don't you? But I mean, it's so beautiful. I'm like, man, this is life. Because that's how you feel. You're going through all this stuff, but you never lose the mark. You never lose the mark. It goes to my favorite illustration, and I'll stop with this preaching stuff. But really, I love this illustration of the disciples being in the water. And they're in the boat, and they see Jesus walking on water. Now that's weird. But they see him walking on water, and they're like astonished. But there's like a storm, all this stuff is happening, he's walking on water. And Peter, with his zealous self, oh, if you call me, I'll do it. Okay. And he does. Right? He does it. He's walking on water. And nothing changed. The storm didn't stop. The waves didn't stop crashing. The wind didn't stop blowing violently. But he's walking on water. Life didn't just suddenly get better, but he's walking on water. It was only until he took his eyes off the prize, he started to sink. Because distraction, all this stuff. It's so weird we're afraid of life being life. And we let life have its way with our mission, with our thing. Like, we don't know we're going to have tribulations. People have a hard time, and I'm almost afraid for not just this generation, but even generations to come, because we're not equipping people to be resilient. And resilience is a real necessity. As you adult more and more, as we all know, and as you get deeper, you all are business people, you're creatives, it. It's like, especially when you're alone and you're creating something, that's the hard part. Like when you're creating something that no one's ever done before, you don't know how this is going to play out. And you have to have this kind of, I don't want to call it crazy, but I would just say resilience. It's just an attribute that is so necessary. So when I was in a circus, that is a culture ensconced in resilience. We came up with the phrase, the show must go on. No matter what. I've been in a position where I watched 8 of my friends. And that's the triggering thing about circus is you're not just performing with somebody and then you go away. These are people you live with, you have fights with, you date, you lunch with, you hang out with. So I saw 8 of them just fall 30 feet out the sky onto a concrete floor in front of me. And it's like, it was an out-of-body experience. But the show must go on. Not knowing if they were alive or dead, but the show must go on. It's a weird kind of resilience that you have in that kind of culture. I got stories for days. There's a lot of stuff in that culture that you would be shocked what people went on and performed for after going through. But it's back to that idea of walking on water. Because a lot of what you're doing is so much bigger than you. It's sort of what the single parent thinks of when they go and take that crappy job. It's just what I have to do until I get over. Now we can redirect that into what you really are. You'll be pretty much a badass if you can redirect that energy into your real mission, into what that really is and what it's really about, the real you. Because a lot of us, it's so crazy because I did it, and I never thought I would, because I was such a soldier about you stick to what you are. No, I'm B plan, I don't do B plans. I was so arrogant when I was a kid, and for good reason. It came in handy. Because I'll never forget, I had these teachers and they meant well. They were so wonderful. But they called me into a library, I'll never forget this. And I think I was about to go to college or maybe high school, I don't know. But these teachers who I admired and I liked them, but they were all like, we know you want to be a performer and everything, and hey, it's what we were doing, but we want to insist that you make sure you have that B plan. And my immediate thought was, yeah, but all of you are living your B plan. And I know you're miserable. Now, of course, I didn't say that out loud. Back then, your teachers could punch you in the face. But, I immediately thought it. And it really did scare me because I was like, I can't take that advice. And thank goodness I didn't, because things turned out really well. And pretty well, and I got to see some of those teachers again, and they were like, wow, I can't believe it. And nobody can ever believe it when stuff happens. Like you stick to something, and it happens, and everybody says the same thing, I can't believe it. What do you mean you can't believe it? I suffered for this thing. I was serious. And that's what's going to happen. That it's a rewarding thing. It's wonderful. Don't do it for the haters. Let them hate. Haters are wonderful. But do it for the people who just go, I can't believe it. And I think they do the whole I can't believe it thing because, as a buddy of mine once told me, man, he said this and it shook me up. He said, and he was speaking from life experience. He was not doing his thing. He was in the corporate world, miserable. Just going, he was like, I was a grown man doing newspaper routes. And I'm a musician, man. He's a musician, brilliant musician. And I'll never forget, he told me this. He said, as soon as I buckled down and made a conscientious effort to go for it, he said, I can't tell you how many friends I lost. He said, as I got better and more successful, got even worse. And what he came to the conclusion was, the reality is, when you lock into what it is you are, you testify against those who aren't doing it. And nothing, as we can clearly see in our current society, nothing wrangles people like the truth. Like the truth. Not a truth, not your truth, not my truth, the truth. Knowing that there's really nothing actually stopping you. And to see someone within your vicinity doing their thing, it's kind of a condemnation. It's kind of a ping. What's stopping you? And I have to believe that's why we're all gathered here. Because that's what people who are serious do. They come to fellowship. They come to fellowship to see who's really serious. That's why you come to things like this. You want to see who's serious. You want to see who else is on a journey with you, which is a great thing. And this is what you want to continue to feed yourself with. And you pick up new company. That's another trip, isn't it? Not just being resilient, but having the capacity to let go. Having the capacity to walk away from certain relationships. Having the capacity to walk away from certain relationships in honor of what it is you're about. It's not easy. It's not easy. It can be draining. It costs. It just costs. You know, there's no way around it. It costs, man. It costs to be what you actually are. And if I can give you anything, it is please take up the courage at all times. Hype yourself up. Be your number one hype man or woman, because you're going to need it. Re-engage your capacity for resilience. It's something you have to feed all the time, because as we learned, nobody knows what the world is going to do. You have your plans, you have your dream boards, and life goes, hey, take this curveball. You know, I mean, you don't know. And you have to have the capacity to walk on water at all times, to walk on water. Have what it is you do, your thing, always front and center. And also, be daring enough to go with the detours it will take you on. Because it won't betray you. It will test you, as it does, as we know. It tests you every day. But it won't betray you, but it will guide you. And often it will take you on some interesting pathways. Believe me, I did not have circus on a dream board somewhere. I want to help us understand it's a myth that people run away and join the circus. They don't. It's more like the Matrix. Like it just finds you. Because there's no way in the world I had that in my mind. I was going to be an opera singer. That's what I was going to do. I saw Placido Domingo when I was 13 years old. I was in Japan. I was with this wonderful boy choir, and that was the first time I heard a human voice do that, and I was like, oh, that's it. I got to do that. I mean, everything in my system lit up when I heard Placido Domingo for the first time. And maybe some of you have had similar experiences when you found your thing. You know, something you saw someone. I remember I worked with this beautiful costume designer, and he was telling me, he said, yeah, man, I was 13 too. He said, and oddly enough, I went to see La Boheme, and it was the costumes. And I just got these goosebumps, and I just fell in love with that. I said, this is just wild. You know, we get that kind of calling. Everybody's had their sacred moment. And you go with that, and I challenge you to always reach back to it when you get in those places of doubt. When you're on that stage like I was in Louisiana, and life goes, here's a pandemic. Oh, that affects your entire livelihood. Keep your eyes on it. Because I wasted a lot of time. It's so crazy. I wasted a lot of time doing that insurance thing, because I was thinking, oh man, you know, this is great. You know, it'll be remote. It's going to be remote. I'll do remote work. That's all. I'll do some remote work. And you know, when I got time, you know, I'll practice. I'll do what I'm supposed to do. No, I didn't. Not just what they don't tell you is when you're building something like that, that's a whole new life that has to be built up, and you have to put energy in that. And I was basically apologizing to the people who hired me. I was like, man, this is not for me, because I don't want to put that kind of energy in it, because I don't intend on giving my life to this. This is just in the meantime. And I've never done in the meantime. That's never been me. And that's why I went through all the stress, and my money was looking at me like, it's not helping, you know? And as a result, unfortunately, I burned up time, valuable time that I could have just been plowing ahead with my thing, you know? Instead of trying to make it happen and coming up with all the excuses as to why I need to make it happen. Oh, I gotta feed the kids and the wife. They're fine. Your wife and children, they're freaking resilient. They were looking at me like I was an idiot. They were grateful, you know, that I was at least trying something. But it was like, why don't you stick to what you do? And it's amazing, because when you stick to what you do, really the environment around you aligns correctly. Even with the doubters, even with your own doubt, you can feel it. You can feel it in yourself when you're ensconced in your mission, ensconced in your thing. Even at the hardest moments, there's a lightness there that reminds you you're in the right place. You're doing it right. And everybody's got that story. Everybody, I don't care who they are. Everybody's got their story. And I hang on to those mentors, whether they're here or they're gone, man. I mean, doggone it, Frank Sinatra almost killed himself. His throat hemorrhaged, and everything went to crap. And he almost killed himself. He was depressed, lost all his money, his marriage was busted, well, his own fault. And, you know, he ends up making the greatest comeback probably in showbiz history, you know. But we all have these mountains, we all have these moments. And the truth is, you have to stick to what it is you are. And I know that more so now than ever. And if I can give you any gift, I will tell you, no matter the storm, no matter the season, no matter the little demons in your head, no matter what it is, do your work. Do your work. No matter how the waves may crash, do your work. No matter the lightning and the thunder and the relatives who are going, go, try something else. Do your work. Do your work, because there's something about just plain old good old grit. And it's never, you know, some people will say, you know, I mean, it's unrealistic. Of course it is. This has never been done before. You're unrealistic. You've never been here before. I mean, if you think about it like that, there's not going to be another you. So you're sort of bound to it. Like in the history of the entire universe, you're it. And if you don't do it, it will be costly for others. I'll tell you this, and I'm going to close. This is when I knew, and it happened to me twice. So in my glamorous lifestyle of circus, you know, I used to have to regale you the whole bit. I was beautiful. So a buddy of mine calls me for some convention they were doing, and he calls me and says, man, I can't do the announcements and watch my table. You think you can come and just fill in for me for the announcements? Yeah, sure, I'm dressed something like this. So I go to the convention center, and you know, I'm just announcing people. It's so funny, you know, it was like kind of like, I don't know, I was just waking up. It was like, you know, I was feeling myself, because you know, when you're comfortable with doing what you do, you feel sexy. You know, like you know, and it's always the same. People are like, damn, we never got an announcement like that. I'm like, I know, and I'm doing my thing, and it's so funny. This kid, this young man, he comes halfway from the other side of the convention hall. He goes, "It's you, right?" I said, "What?" "It's you, man." I said, "What?" "You that ringmaster." And I'm going, huh? I'm dressed like this. I'm not in my stuff. He said, "No, I know your voice, man." He said, I grew up on your voice. I know your voice. He said, "It's you." I was like, crap. I was like, wow. I was like, okay. Recently, I'm in Las Vegas working with a wonderful organization, CNTV. They do a lot of content work for a lot of conferences, and I'm doing some work there, and I'm just doing like, you know, nice video work, and tune in later, and doing that a whole bit. And this gorgeous couple comes by. I kid you not. Same thing happens. We walk over, "Excuse me, we don't want to bother you, but aren't you that guy?" And I'm like, wow, what am I saying to you? Be that guy. Just being your sexy. Because the reality is, it's so not about you. I get stories till this day from extremely dynamic to, you know, just regular, you know, young people who literally grew up on my voice, and they were like, wow, I went into this because I heard you then. I went into this because I never saw anybody who looked like me doing that on such a high level, and I thought, well, I might as well try it. You know, and they've done all sorts of things. In other words, there's a seed that has a glorious harvest. You're carrying a seed that has a glorious harvest that a lot of people are going to munch off from. And you owe them that. You owe them that to persevere. You owe them that to be resilient. You owe them that not to give up on your thing. And there it is, folks. The end.